September 1st, the devastation of what would be the Second World War began. The war lasted 6 years. It started with an invasion from Germany on Poland, which led to a declaration of war from France and Britain on Germany on September 3rd. Germany's Chamberlain, Adolf Hitler, was the reason for France and Britain's declaration, as well as for the entire World War II. Adolf Hitler wanted to conquer Europe, and in his wake he left an insurmountable amount of destruction. Later, the United States of America joined the war, officially making it a world war when Japan, Germany's ally, attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The war was fought on all fronts of the earth, by land, sea, and sky. World War II obliterated the majority of the Jewish population and left the European population decimated. Not only was there an innumerable amount of death, there was also serious economic and architectural damage that normally comes along with war. The total death count from the war was 88,195,400. The bombs from the war leveled houses, even cities, and the battles destroyed land. Also with the war, there was destruction of people's rights. During the war, many people's rights were basically superfluous because of fear, egotistical maniacs, and because of the urgently burning desire to win the war from all parties. In both America and Europe, there were main encroachments of rights. In America, the biggest encroachment on rights came after the Pearl Harbor attack. America's Constitution has a Bill of Rights that all American citizens are entitled to. Among those Bill of Rights is the Ninth Amendment, which is the right to enjoy many other freedoms. Some of those other freedoms that American citizens can enjoy are freedom to live or travel anywhere in our nation, freedom to work at any job for which we can qualify, freedom to marry and raise a family. After the attack, all Japanese descent living in America, even those who were full-fledged Americans, had these freedoms taken away.
First, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. The reason we asked you to speak with us today is because of a collegiate paper you wrote on the Japanese internment camps, and we'd like to ask you a few questions on them.
No problem.
Can you tell us about why you wrote this paper, where you found this information, and what it was specifically about?
Yeah, so I wanted to write this paper because I just thought it was such a kind of sad part in our history, and I wanted to learn more about it and maybe understand why our government decided to do this. And I knew that my grandma had visited the Topaz internment camp and that her aunt and uncle taught there, so I knew I could maybe find some good sources, so I got some information from my grandma. I also found there's like a Topaz Foundation where I found some information. I looked at a lot of books to get more information on it as well. And so I dealt mainly with different people who had been in camps. I found this really cool website that actually had videos of people who had been in the camp and their interviews. And so I got to listen to what they had to say about their experience in Topaz, and I focused a lot on how it affected them personally, and then why our government would choose to do that to these people who were just normal American citizens.
Also, just one last question. What did this mean for the Japanese and their rights? Because we know that there were several Japanese full-fledged American citizens who were taken to these camps. So what did it mean about their rights? Did they ever regain them? Or?
Well, you know, after the camps, they were allowed to go, I guess, back to their normal lives, but during that time, there was, you know, the notice put up that they had to leave. They didn't have rights. They were not, I mean, they have rights. We're all born with, you know, certain rights as human beings, and they were not given those rights. And they were treated terribly. It doesn't even matter if some of them were American citizens yet. The fact that they're human beings and they will be forced to leave their businesses, leave their homes, and go to this camp where they were very limited in their freedoms. I mean, it's just awful. I can imagine how degrading that would feel for these people. They would just feel so. I don't know how I would feel in that situation, to just have everything taken away from me. It would be a very, very hard thing to get over. And I think that a lot of them probably had a hard time the rest of their lives, even not being in the camp, just because of what they were put through.
Adolf Hitler, the man who began it all, had the belief that if someone was not an Aryan, then that person was not human. During his quest of conquer in World War II, Hitler pushed this belief on all of those he conquered. This spelled bad things for Jews, Muslims, gays, gypsies, and other groups that were similarly different like these. Little by little, Hitler started making new laws that would eventually strip all rights from these groups. The group that endured the worst of it were the Jews. Hitler began destroying Jews' rights first by putting on curfews, school restrictions, making segregated parks and public places, and a no movie restriction. Then Hitler made the marking, which was what forced all Jewish people to wear a gold Star of David, marking them as Jews. After that, everything only got worse and worse. Nazi officers began rounding up Jews and taking them to segregated living areas, along with gypsies, gays, and Muslims, where they were all killed by gas, or they would take them to concentration camps. These horrors became known as the Holocaust. Hitler killed millions of Jews and many Muslims, gays, and gypsies. These people's rights to live freely, work freely, religious freedom, and any other rights they had were utterly obliterated. Overall, World War II was a struggle and dark time for people's rights. Luckily, the horrors done to the people's rights and the war did not stand. The war ended on May 8, 1945.
Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied expeditionary forces and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command. Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday, the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe Day. Long live the cause of freedom. God save the King.
Unfortunately, Hitler left behind quite a mess. Due to the corruption of rights during the war, it called for a redefining of people's rights. It also caused there to be an awakening of new rights for certain cultures, ethnicities, and genders. During the war, since all the men were fighting overseas, women had to step into the men's roles. Women had to start working and doing all the jobs that the men would have done if they would have been there. So, after the war, when the men returned, they tried to put women back into their domestic sphere, but the women wouldn't have it. Some women liked working outside of the domestic sphere. So from then on, women began pushing the idea forward of the working woman. This led to a change in women's roles forever. Also, after the war, for there to be peace, at the end, the Allied forces demanded that Germany give recompense to all of them, or in other words, they had to pay reparations. Before the end of World War II, reparations had always been given by the defeated to the victors as compensation for the victors fighting the war. But after World War II, reparations were given a new meaning. Because of the Holocaust, Germany had to give reparations to the Jewish people. Germany paid reparations to all Holocaust survivors and to the state of Israel. These reparations did not bring back all of those people killed, but it allowed the survivors to make new lives for themselves. Also, after the war, Jews and the other groups harmed enjoyed the restoration of all their rights and religious freedom. Today, Jews, Japanese, women, and other groups all still enjoy religious freedom, regained rights, and new freedom of rights that they gained or regained after the war. Hopefully, people will be able to enjoy these rights to their full extent and freedom forever. Let us hope that there will not be another rights-destroying world war, or any world war at that, again.